go.
Jupiter Jones lives a quiet but pretty lame life. Then one day she realizes she's intergalactic royalty, which comes with a few complicated affairs jeopardizing the fate of the planet Earth. The good. Though its presence is pretty sparse throughout most of the movie, this film's attempt at comedy is pretty good. You know those moments in movies where you're yelling at the movie screen for a character to do a certain thing, and then they don't do it and they get killed or something? Well, in this movie, we have one of those moments where the character actually does what you're yelling at the screen for them to do, and that made me very happy. Throughout the movie, Jupiter is learning more about the universe beyond Earth, the thing that she has known most of her life. And as she learns about it, a few ideas are presented, ideas that are actually a little intriguing and question-raising. In other words, they're kind of neat to think about outside just the context of this movie. The iffy. The action in this movie was serviceable. It was pretty cool at first, combining the use of high-tech gadgets with the use of hand-to-hand combat, but after seeing these techniques repeated scene after scene, and also the shaky cam that was used for a lot of flying scenes where there were spaceships shooting at each other, it started to lose its flair. The bad. One of the biggest turnoffs about this movie is the acting. Most of the performers playing villainous characters are hamming it up excessively. Most of the people playing primary characters either have a very grim tone as if everything they're talking about is some grave level of importance, or they're speaking so apathetically like they just don't really care about anything and are so cut off from any kind of human emotion. This problem is especially present with our main character, Jupiter Jones, played by Mila Kunis. Jupiter is a character that's along for the ride pretty much the entire movie. Her morals, perceptions, and values about situations are admirable and all, but that doesn't make her a very interesting character because 90% of what happens in the film is stuff that is done for her or is stuff that is out of her control. Add that to her monotonous performance and you've got a pretty boring main character. As for the villains, I want to say I understand all of their motivations pretty clearly. In fact, if we're speaking plainly, I'm pretty sure most of them have relatively the same motivation. But because of a lot of personal sentiment expressed by these villains, it muddies the waters of what should be very clear motivations, and thus it makes me unsure of what they're doing and why they're doing it, thus making the plot harder to follow. I feel like this idea wasn't a doomed idea, but it would have been better if they had expressed it with two villains, so there was a bit of a dichotomy instead of three where it becomes a triangle and it just gets confusing. This movie also tries to work in a love story, but I feel like this doesn't really work because there's hardly chemistry between the two people who are supposed to be in love. However, with all of these performances, I may feel it's not necessarily the actor's fault, but the writer-directors, the Wachowski brothers. I say this mostly because of the writing, because the conversation flow between characters is very weird at times. The verdict? Jupiter Ascending is one of those basic kinds of science fiction movies that you'll just see sneak its way into theaters every now and again. Unfortunately, it's so basic, despite what I had to say about it, that I just can't even really be that mad at it except for the fact that I wasted $8 on basic. This is Detective Steve reminding you, gentle viewer, that Star Wars Episode 7 is only 10 months away.